Do a.
All right. So, what's your name?
My name is Allison Tram.
What sports do you play?
I do pom, track, and I dance.
And why do you play these sports? Why do you like to play them?
I like pom and dance because I've just been growing up to dance my whole life, and then I started pom in high school, and I like the people in it, and I just like the sport.
All right. So, I'm going to go into a few questions about my topic here. What's the most common injury you see for a player, and why?
Well, it depends on the type of sport you play. For like track, I see shin splints a lot, and that's from like not working out or warming up as much as you should. And then dancing, it's probably like rolled ankles because of like so many turns and leaps and not stretching out your ankles as much.
Okay. How many players get injured on average every season?
I have no idea.
Do you remember how many players got injured
No.
this season? Okay.
I have no idea.
Estimation.
What is
I have no
what is the
idea.
average age of the player who is injured during the season? So, is it going to be a freshman? Is it going to be a junior? Is it going to be a junior
It's
varsity?
usually like freshmen and sophomores because when you're a junior and senior, you kind of like know by then how to prevent those injuries.
Okay. So you're saying as you get older, it's going to be you know more about the sport and you know
Yeah,
it's easier. For
yeah, like you experience the injuries when you're younger, so you learn how to avoid them.
What sports gear can be used to prevent sports injuries and how?
Either,
And it can be like mats. It can be like what sort
well,
of?
running, there's no really mats. There's like these little like band things you can put underneath your knees, and those will usually help, but mainly it's just stretching and stuff to prevent the injuries.
Okay. What rules of the sport or the ways of playing the sport that are set to avoid injuries?
For track, we usually have to do some warm-up laps, and then there's some exercises and drills we'll do before we actually start running, and then dancing, it's just stretching and core for 30 minutes before we start.
So, what do you suggest somebody who's going into a sport? What do you think they should know going into that sport?
They need to...
Like, for example, track or dance.
For track, you have to stay dedicated, and you have to commit to warming up every single day, not just slack one day and be like, oh, I'll be fine, because I warmed up yesterday, or I ran yesterday. Same with dance. You just always have to warm up and keep your muscles warmed up and moving.
How do you treat a sports injury? Like, what is ways you know to treat sports injuries?
The way you treat it or don't treat it?
The way you treat it, like if you have
The way
if
you
you've got
treat
injury.
it, if you usually have to like go from icing and heating it every other way, or putting like icy hot on it. That's what I'll usually do.
Okay. What has been the most interesting situation with a sports injury? Like the craziest, outrageous?
Well, I've seen on like shows like that one basketball player,
Oh, that got his.
Derrick Rose.
Yeah,
maybe?
got his.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
like his knee
What
went
about with you?
out.
Like, have you ever seen
With-
somebody?
At dance, I've seen a girl's knee pop out of her socket.
Oh.
That was disgusting. Track, I've just seen like people fall and like start bleeding from different body parts, like legs and face and stuff. It's gross.
So, how do you think sports injuries should be looked at by the public, by players, by coaches?
I feel like everybody really has like the same like idea on it. Like you can prevent injuries, you just need to know the right way as to how to prevent them.
What do you think coaches or referees need to know more about sports injuries to avoid and treat them, if there's anything they should know more about?
I just think I feel like coaches and referees should take like a first aid class or something, because most coaches don't know how to treat the injuries. Like my track coach has no idea how to treat any injury whatsoever.
Okay. And last question here. Do you think medical help should be on site in any sports event?
For sure.
Okay.
Like football games, there's always first ambulance on the sidelines, but I've never seen them at any other.
No other sports
No,
event?
I've never seen it.
Only football?
Well, yeah, for like high school football, but
Right.
professional, I've seen first aid because
Right,
they're
right,
like all pro and everything.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. what's the most common sports injury you see for a player?
Well, there's different injuries for different sports. Mainly in football, you'll see some broken bones, and a lot in track, you'll find a lot of like shin splints and pulled muscles, and usually a lot of some minor injuries.
Okay. How many players get injured on average every season?
Well, for football, probably I'd say about 3 players a season on each team for football. And then on track, there's a lot more injuries, but they're very minor and small injuries that usually players can deal with. Probably around 10.
All right. What is the average age of a player who's injured during the season?
Probably around 16.
16?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. What sports gear can be used to prevent sports injuries?
What?
What sports gear can be used to prevent sports injuries?
Sportswear. Helmets, especially in football, and more protection with the pads, like shoulder pads. Make sure that's good material that can absorb like large hits. And in track, you can just try not to run too hard. I don't know.
Okay, and last question. Do you think medical help should be on site at any sports event?
I think medical help should be on site because it can really help save lives of many teenage athletes. But I know also for high schools, they all have trainers, and most of the time the trainers aren't on site, so I think that's a good thing to have.
All right, thank you.
My name is Adam.
Okay. What sports do you play?
I play football and basketball, and I golf.
Okay. And why do you like playing these sports, and why do you play them in the first place?
Well, aside from golf, they're physically demanding, and I like that because it keeps me healthy, and it gives me an outlet to get out with my energy that I got throughout the day.
All right, so my first question is, what is the most common sports injury you see in a player?
Well, a lot of them are ankle injuries. That's a big one. People
Okay.
just roll their ankles, and it's not that serious. that's pretty quick. At a week or two, they can recover from that.
Okay. How many players usually get injured on average every season, if you know?
Well, a majority of the players will get some sort of injury that is fine after a week or two, but there's always like 2 or 3 that get pretty bad, like they'll break something or tear something in their body, and then that takes a lot longer and they'll be out for the season usually.
Okay. What is the average age of a player who's injured during the season? Like a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior?
Oh, it's every age.
Any age.
That really doesn't determine it.
Okay. So you think that the same amount of seniors are going to get injuries as the amount of freshmen?
Well, now if you're saying like that, then it could be like the freshmen and things like football they gotta play, because the senior stuff are physically bigger than the freshmen and everything, so they're in a direct contact sport like that, it's a lot easier for them to become injured.
Right. Okay, what sports gear can be used to prevent sports injuries that you know of?
Just if you wear all the recommended pads and everything that is recommended for each sport individually, but there's nothing that can really prevent it. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
What rules of the game or ways of playing a sport avoid sports injuries and prevent them?
Well, there's a lot of safety rules, especially lately. They're putting in a lot more rules for the safety purposes, like the new one. They're putting in a lot of new ones, especially in football, because of how many people get hurt and messed up in the NFL, and like their minds are just destroyed from all the contact they're taking to the head. So it's a lot of safety rules. That's about it.
Okay. What do all soon-to-be like players, either basketball or football or golf, what should they know going into the sport?
Well, they should know that there's a chance that they can get injured, but if they are understanding of that, then there's a lot that they can do to prevent being injured. If they stretch out before, if they have an idea of what they're doing better than just going out there and hoping for the best.
Okay. What ways do you know of treating a sports injury?
Well, it definitely depends on what kind of injury. There's no 2 injuries are the same, and you'll be treated differently. Like, Tiffany Chen, the trainer here, if you got like a muscle cramp or any other injury to just the muscle, not bone or anything like that, she'll just put some heat on it or have you ice it, everything like that. If you're breaking bones, then you're just gonna need to sit out for like the rest of the season, pretty much.
Okay. What has been your most interesting or crazy situation with a sports injury, with either you or another player that you've seen?
Sports injury. Was like snowboarding counted as a sport?
Yes. Yeah.
The craziest injury. I broke my arm real bad snowboarding. That was exciting because I split both my ulna and my radius. So like I fell and I tried to get back up, and then my hand was dangling perpendicular to my arm, and that freaked me out a little bit.
All right. How do you think sports injuries should be looked at by the public, players, and coaches?
There's something that you should definitely be concerned about, but I'm worried that they're gonna take too big of steps to try to get rid of those, because no matter how much they do, if it's still the sport, they're gonna be injured. But if you do too much to try to prevent those, more than the players should be just doing for themselves, than knowing like what they are capable of and what could happen, then it will really take a lot out of the sport, and then it'll just like ruin it for everybody.
Okay. What do you think coaches and referees need to know about sports injuries to avoid and treat them better? If you have anything on that.
I feel like they do a pretty good job. They understand like how people are getting injured and stuff, and that's how the rules have been made about what's legal and what's not legal anymore.
Okay.
Lots of sports.
And the last question is, do you think medical help should be on site at any sports event?
Well, not golf. Well, maybe. Somebody in the head, but they should be. It should be like the amount of medical staff available. It definitely depends on what kind of sport.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Hi. What is your name?
Olga Dolgih.
Okay, so I have a few questions here about sports injuries. So, how many injuries have you had experience with patients?
Once in a while I see patients with sports injuries, for example, patients who play football or soccer.
Okay. How do you suggest an injury be treated if not severe enough for the ER?
If injury is not severe enough for the ER, first what we do X-ray. For example, if patient came with a knee injury after playing soccer, we do knee X-ray, making sure bones are intact, and after that I'm gonna examine the knee, palpate the bone, and then suggest wear a knee brace.
Okay. How do you suggest athletes avoid sports injuries?
Wear knee support, for example, for knee or joint support braces during during time they play sports.
Do you think sports gear effectively prevents major injuries, and why?
Yes, I believe sports gear very effectively protect from sports injuries, and they should be worn during the major games and during the training.
What do you suggest for people playing sports to know about sports injuries?
They need to know basic anatomy of their joints and their muscles and skeleton, and they have to know physiology, how bones working, and by knowing these facts, they will be able to avoid major problems by using certain type of movements and protect themselves from injuries.
What would you like the community to know about sports injuries, just in general?
Just general information, like I said, they need to be educated on basic anatomy and basic availabilities for supportive gears for the sports they play in.
Okay, and last question. Do you think medical assistance should be on set at any sports game?
Yes, definitely, and every sport game is supposed to have medical staff available and be ready to take care of injured athletes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.